Welcome to the Vinyl Verdict. We've got the dream team today. Hopefully these are all familiar faces, but we've got everyone together and we're coming together for a big event, which is the release of the Pete Ham Acoustic CD. Obviously this is a pretty momentous 50-year since Pete's passing, and just incredible to have 30 songs still being released at this point, touched up to a tremendous degree and sounding beautiful. Maybe we can do kind of brief intros. I know that everyone's met Tom and Kevin, but maybe Mark, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. I'm Mark Strothmann. The only time you've seen me in the Vinyl Verdict is in the background during the Jack Koshik interview.
And what was your role on this project, Mark?
Working together. Tom had a vision, I think, and as we discovered things in the reels, we found real gems. We all started talking about it. It was part of like the early on vision we have for what's left with Pete's music. So it's just kind of part of this triangle that we have left to work with.
Kevin, for those who don't know and can't guess maybe from your background, can you speak a little bit about your role in the project?
Yeah, I do the restoration and the mastering of the tracks. Just try to get them to sound as clean as possible without sounding artificial. You know, there's some of them you'll notice they're still, it's not absolutely, sometimes if you try to get too much out, you start denigrating the songs. It's just to get them sounding natural. That's always my goal with this, to not get in the way. You know, the main thing is Pete's ideas come through and it sounds pleasing, as opposed to, you get some old stuff, old boots and stuff that just unlistenable. You're just like, I'm never going to put this on again. So that's we always want to make sure that this is stuff people want to go back to and hear, because there's some great tracks on here.
Yeah, I think you succeeded there, and I know you're saying Pete's ideas, but you're not just talking about that song, which is one of my favorites. We'll save that. Gotta be careful. Yeah. And then Tom, you want to give a brief intro? I know there's a lot of scope that you have here, but what was your involvement specifically on this project?
Well, I did all the audio research and selected most of the tracks, some with Mark's help. When I first went through all the recordings of Pete, I made a list of everything and then determined that it would fill up roughly 3 albums. And in the process, I discovered that there were so many tracks with Pete just playing acoustic guitar. And then I remembered years ago there was an album that the Lennon estate put out called John Lennon Acoustic. That gave me the idea of doing a Pete Ham version of John Lennon Acoustic. It worked out perfectly because the remaining tracks after that filled up 2 albums. So we have Gwent Gardens, and then now there's enough left over for another album of different type of recordings with piano and other instruments. So the Pete Ham Acoustic gets rid of all the acoustic only songs, gets them out of the way, so we have all the rest of Pete's songs to release. We're still going through cassette recordings and still finding a few tracks that didn't turn up on the reels that we looked through first. Mark's been feeding me all the recordings. It's a long process of listening through all these long compilations and in trying to find something new. And it's like weeding out the gems out of the chaff, or trying to find things nobody's heard before. And I have come across a few things I think Dan Matavina missed completely. There's one on this album, the early version of Perfection, called I Can't Forget. I think that's something he totally overlooked, because he didn't even write about it in his book, so I think he totally overlooked it.
I can't forget the circus.
That kind of stuff has happened with projects where we're going and finding stuff, and then the album gets released, and then we find something that could have been on there. It happened with Gwent. It happened with I Am Myself. And it's happened with How Much Is the Sky? And it just happened the other day where Tom's going through what we're going through now, and he found an updated, newer version of Pete's idea with all these insane psychedelic sound effects. It's unbelievable, and it's like, what?
Yeah, it's full of backwards symbols.
What? We're gonna need a deluxe edition or something soon.
But I just wanted to say, I think, I mean, Tom and Kevin would know way better than I would, but I think like some of these seedlings, like any Badfinger fan would do if they're sitting up at night writing down their dream lists. I remember when Ivy's Origins 1 came out, I wrote like my own idea. I don't even know what they had recorded. But this album did come from this idea that Dan had where he wanted to call it Pete's Rockin' Blues. And Tom and I think universally were just so cringed out by the name and the concept that it led to this. I believe that's how you came upon it, right, Tom?
Yeah, it was part of one of Dan's lists. He also had another concept of putting out all Pete's instrumentals on another album, but I talked him out of that.
Wonder Wheel.
Yeah, that was the Wonder Wheel album.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a tough decision to know how to package these because there are so many tracks, but you have to group them together and sequence them in some way. So, I mean, one thing that jumped out too is just the length of this in terms of number of tracks, right? I know Keyhole Street was similar, but other than that, we're used to getting probably 15 or so, and many of those are not completely new tracks. So was the intention always to kind of throw everything onto this that is acoustic, or did it grow over time as you found more of those tracks?
Grew a little bit. We had most of them, and we just discovered a few late in the game in the past few months. But something like Keyhole Street, that couldn't even hold all of the early demos of Pete because we came out with Happy Song and Gwent Gardens, and on this new album we have Suspicious. So those would have been on Keyhole Street. They fit in with those other tracks.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting release too because it covers a huge chronology from like 66 all the way to 75, but yet it's still kind of cohesive because it's Pete with an acoustic and a Revox, I assume, but obviously very different sounds from blues to country to the pop side. So I know we all have our own different tastes, and like you said, we probably have made our own lists of favorite Pete Ham songs over time. I would love to go around and just hear what were your favorite songs that emerged through this process and why. So maybe, Tom, you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, sure. There's so many. I'll list a couple. Little Bit of Rock and Roll, the first song. It's definitely one of my favorites. Just wish it was longer and complete. It's a really good one. Pete didn't write too many straight rock and roll songs. So, and then there's Our Song, which is good. It's about a guy and a girl's relationship with relating to their favorite 45 vinyl record and their memories of that. And there's Let's Get Together. That's a short one, but it's really catchy. And let's say one more. I like Suspicious too. That's grown on me, the one from early years. And Something to Hide, which is really emotional. That's a great track at the end of the CD.
I really wanted our song to be on Gwent Gardens. I was like looking at all these things. Gwent Gardens is going to be the first one. It had to be really good. Each one is kind of, this belongs there, that belongs there. It's not like it's being coerced or anything. These things are just finding where they need to go. But I think Our Song and One Lonely Day are really, really strong. Pete's Idea is my personal favorite just because when we went through the reels and I heard that, I was just like, agog, like, what is this? And it's Pete Ham acoustic with no other use of anything else except his voice and some probably coins or change or something. It's the only one that gets away with that. And a little bit of rock and roll is a really great one. I found like a 1990s overdubbed longer version of that was like 5 minutes with a guitar solo. And so that was how I first heard the song. And then when I got to finally hear it, it's like 49 seconds. Great. Thanks, Pete. But it's a banger, and it's a really great way to start the album off, because the album is, you never know. It's going to be a song under a minute, a song that's 2.5, or Pete's idea where it's like 5 minutes,
Yeah, well, that's very true. He covers a lot of ground in a minute too, even on those shorter ones.
No doubt.
What your favorite, Kevin?
I mean, for me, just because it's one of my all-time favorite Pete songs, hearing "Wherefore the Dark" and where he's singing "Just You and Me," and then in the middle of the song he switches it over to "Just You and I." It's like you can hear him thinking as he's saying, like, that doesn't really say "You and I" sounds right. "You and Me" doesn't, and it's just, that song is like encapsulates for me everything about Pete. Like, that is like, it's just, his heart is opened up, and it's like, show me, and you have to do this. It's just, I don't know. It's just, that's Pete Ham. That song is pure Pete Ham for me. I love "Midnight Sun." That's one of my favorites of his as well. The whole album, what I love about this whole set, like Mark said, there's some things that are like 45 seconds, 49 seconds, a couple of minutes, but it all fits. It's like there's not anything that jumps out and says, this doesn't belong. And this stuff it just flows. And if you just go with it and just listen to it, you can just, the ideas are like the Pete's idea. I mean, holy good God. I mean, I was like listening to that this morning. I was just like, it was just like blood. I'm just like, my jaw just dropped. Just like, okay, God bless him. He was just such a freaking talent. Just, it's just amazing that I get to sit there and a few months working on this stuff, and like it's me and Pete in the room while it's playing. You feel like you can see him sitting there at some part where you're doing this stuff, and you're just like sitting on a couch watching him work, and that's what it feels like. It's so intimate and it's so great. It's just like, I think the fans are really gonna be happy with this one. I really do.
Yeah. I think it has something for everyone too. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the demos of the studio songs that Badfinger would release, because I think that's a treat on here as well. And "Wherefore the Dark" obviously expected the acoustic. "Midnight Sun" and "I Can't Take It" really surprised me that it sounds like those were worked at they started on acoustic, but with the vision for it to be an electric song.
Yeah, and I love "I Can't Take It." That's another one of mine. And I heard it. It's just like, wow, he was really, like you said, you hear it on acoustic, you're like, okay, this is, it's just, I just can't fathom. Like, one thing Mike had said to me, he goes, he was a tunesmith. He just, words of music, it just flowed out and flowed through him, and it was just like, there was not a minute that he wasn't like writing with, that was him. He was amazing.
Yeah.
And this just further solidifies it in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'm curious about too on these snippets, we're all fans of the snippets. Maybe can you guys speak a little bit to how much of these snippets were intentional, where people would just record a quick 30-second idea to get it down, versus potentially these being complete songs that were recorded over, or otherwise maybe the quality just wasn't there for the full release?
Most of them were just ideas. He just got them down on tape so he wouldn't forget them. And maybe for later use, for sticking it together with something else, like maybe how like "Without You" was created. Unfortunately, he never went back to a lot of these. There's so many good ones. It would have been great if he went back to them, but you had to keep moving forward. And unfortunately, he never got back to finishing any of these gems that he put down on tape.
Like Papers on
the that he taped over. Most of these that's the way they are. He just put down on tape whatever he had written so far, and most of the songs he wrote were music first. He always seemed to have to do the lyrics afterward. If he hadn't done them together, he would have to come up with lyrics or try to make them up as he was playing through the song.
We were talking last week, Tom, about Papers on the Table being such a short song, but it's so well put together for what it is. And he typed up the lyrics, but the song's like 18 seconds or something.
Yeah.
It's like getting to the end of the tape snippet. When you see that you have that left and you're as creative as Pete Ham, that's what you do, I think. And I think a lot of these little, really, really short songs are from, them not allowing tape to just run out, leave something,
No, it's like if you think about the song Dennis, I found his demo tapes for that song is made up of like 4 or 5 little bits of songs. So he could have been thinking along those lines,
I could stitch them together.
5 little songs to make one song out of it.
There's not too many examples of that where those snippets made it to final albums. But that was also one of my takeaways, is just how much he's playing with like almost A/B testing little sections and seeing. I mean, you mentioned Word for the Dark, saying you and me instead of you and I, or one lonely day instead of a lonely day. But in terms of moving full sections, I think that I Can't Forget is the revelation. That's almost like a Lennon-esque way of taking an entire section of a song, scaffolding around it, and then building a new hit or a new studio track around that. But yeah, I'd be curious if any of these snippets or other snippets were eventually kind of fleshed out into full songs.
Well, it's something like Sweet Josephine. Sweet Josephine became Keep Your Country Tidy. Same tunes, totally different set of lyrics.
Yes, that one. Fans might recognize that from the second disc of the Snapper release of Head First. So it's confirmed that Keep Your Country Tidy was recorded. Do we know how much later, or it's just on a different reel and kind of reworked with different lyrics?
Oh, we're pretty soon afterward, probably within the week. I probably didn't like the lyrics and just made up some different ones.
Yeah. Yeah, same with Army Man and Whiskey Man, right? Kind of just playing around, keeping the melody and everything constant.
Playing around.
Yeah.
There's another verse too, Preacher Man, but that got taped over. So that verse is
Monkey Man too. There's a Monkey Man one, right?
Yeah, Monkey Man's part of Army Man.
Yeah, it's interesting to see kind of Pete's judgment and just knowing maybe which ones are in the spirit of the song or maybe even slightly more commercial. I don't know if he was thinking that far ahead, but I guess having worked through these, what is kind of your assessment of whether or not Pete was writing these for fun to get something down or as real potential contenders for a studio album?
I think he was just trying to come up with a hit song. Just keep trying different ideas, like Bill Collins always told the guys. Just keep writing and writing until you come up with something. Eventually you'll come up with something good.
He has no bad songs. I mean, there's no bad song of his. Even snippets in cutting room, like I'll say this, the cutting room floor stuff, he doesn't have any. He might have been, for whatever reasons he was writing, whether he just wanted to keep writing or he's writing for hits. I mean, it's great that he did, because there's never a dull moment.
Yeah, it's like guys, you hear about guys who are songwriters and they like always have a tape recorder next to their bed, because a lot of time inspiration with guys I know, one of my brothers would have that near his bed, and you wake up in the middle of the night with an idea and you just sometimes just sing it into the recorder, just sing whatever is on your head and then come back later on. I think with Pete, he just get inspired by whatever it might have been. And I remember watching an interview with Beverly, and she would say, yeah, Pete was known, like he'd be going into the studio at like midnight and he'd be in there until like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I think like as he got inspired, he just like, let me get it down, and then maybe like, he's laying it down. He's got nonsense lyrics, and he comes back the next time and all of a sudden lyrics are changing, or he's changing them as he's doing the demo. And that's what I think it was just a matter. I don't know that he was always looking for the hit. I think it was just, I think it just these, you see how these guys, McCartney can write a song, step out of bed and go, and that's what I think it just is. It's like you have to get it out of you. You have it in, you got to get it out and put it down, and then see what comes from it. You kind of like plant that seed. Is it going to grow into a full tree, or is it just going to be a demo? Because that's on his own self editing whether it goes past that or not. I mean, look at what he put out, right? He was like, yeah, maybe this isn't good enough for a full song. I'll stop here.
Yeah.
Probably his own harshest critic, if you think about it.
Yeah, it's true, and that's a great point. I mean, the Revox and these tapes were kind of his canvas. He'd go in there, and you can almost sense which ones he maybe recorded like vocals and guitar live and would just get a takedown versus the ones that he came back and added harmonies and was thinking through the arrangement on. Yeah, interesting to. Obviously, we were speculating a little bit, but I think he can
exactly.
So
yeah, it's all like I Don't Need a Reason Why. He went back to that one, put really nice backing vocal on that one.
Yeah, it's like Mark said. There's not a bad track on here.
Not.
Pete didn't write bad songs.
Yeah,
No, he didn't.
And I think it's hard for obviously in hindsight to try to select which ones might be a single or something like that. I do want to touch on one elephant in the room was that whole Pledge Music campaign back in the day, and the fact that Rusty Sunday and Sweet Josephine were briefly included there. Was that done for any particular reason, or is like maybe more single material?
I have kind of done the track listing. This is kind of how it's worked. There's a whole lot going on in there. What order a song would be, it has to do with what people think of the song. But these are unreleased, so how do you start determining that? It's pretty crazy. But my logic was people knew about Rusty Sunday. People kept talking about the Gwent Gardens singing Rusty Sunday. Rusty Sunday leaked. And so it belongs kind of in the hit zones spot of an album, like 4 or 5, or 3. That goes there, yeah.
And the other piece, I'm curious because we're speculating on, whether or not Pete was fully formed in wanting to present these as hits versus, just maybe experimental. Do we have any knowledge about whether any of these songs were presented to, other than the ones that we recognize from the albums, if any of these songs were ever tried by the group or presented as potential songs?
No, not really. None of the ones that are unknown.
I was going to say, I mean, it might be a stretch, but when you guys were talking about the bits and connecting songs and how there's not a lot of examples of that and stuff, I mean, there are. We just don't really know. You see it with like, Should I Smoke? All the older generation wants to say it's 2 songs. That's fine. But, when I got the album, it was 1 song, in the track, You hear Badfinger went to the studio. They brought a box of tapes. That's one of the first things Jack would tell me over and over and over. It was that stuff he heard from the guys, Jack Koshik would always say that. And it's something you read about and you hear about. So I think you're looking, this song might have a weak spot. Is there a strong spot? I think those are probably conversations that are happening in the fly and probably not getting documented. Yeah. But that's my, thinking.
Yeah. And that's what's cool about this. Really, I think we all listen to these songs and hear slightly different things. I mean, to me, you're such a good woman. I hear, and there's just so much intention in that song and the length of it, and I have to think that was presented or slated somewhere in there. And that's one I'd love to know more about. But like you said, we don't really know. It's kind of just speculation. Yeah. One that jumps out as not being something that would be on a full release in the 1970s is Slug. Probably one of the most unique recordings I've ever heard. What's the story with this reel? What can you tell us about that song?
Well, when I first talked to Tom, I think it had to have been our second or third conversation, and we were like, talking about like our wish lists and stuff. And I remember Tom saying, there's a song called Goldfish and a song called Slug. Dan talked about Slug in the Blue Plaque speech, and we saw these lists of of stuff. Tom has like this matrix report that is like of everything, and then we have kind of like clues and hints to what might be out there. And when we heard, when I heard, there's a song called Goldfish. It's like, these guys are writing about insects and lesser than critters, So that was one. I mean, Tom was like, did you find Slug yet? And I'm going through 137 reels or more than that or whatever. And then going down to Tom, and he's going through them. Slug is there. Finally we found it, and it's this long, detailed song. You have this conversation that goes on before and after, where Pete totally talks about how a slug has purpose and all these things. It is a really great example of how funny he is and also how compassionate he is. It's unfortunate that a song has to be called Slug to show that, but it just, I think it's a great example of, I don't know. I'm really glad we found the song.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it is really unique because it's more of a window in his personality or like his journaling, I think, than maybe outright songwriting. And I was curious, I think in the liner notes it says it was done as almost like a demonstration to friends. Do we know, was he, like, what was on that reel? Is he talking to an audience? Or
there's like a small group of friends in the attic, like sitting around smoking cigarettes, being entertained by Pete.
When I was listening to that reel, right after he played the song, I hear a girl's voice. He might have been hanging out with Beverly, possibly, because right after that he plays this end of the tape kind of jam, and then jokes around at the end, and I hear a girl's voice like talking to him in the background. So he may have been just, doing it for entertainment, just for his own amusement.
Which is really different because I have the image, like Mark, you described it, like Pete up in the attic at 1 a.m. recording this stuff. So doing it socially as like a game with someone there is a very unique recording, I think. And do we have any idea what year that was? Because I think that it's blank there, but is that Ivy's era?
If that was Beverly with him, it could have been 68 maybe or something. I don't know, I'm just guessing, but I think it was pretty early, like Ivy's period, not Badfinger period.
Something, speaking of kind of the intimacy of the album, I do love also that you left in a lot of the count-ins and a little taste of the banter before and after some of the tracks. Was there any clipping that you had to do on the songs just to, like you said, emphasize the replayability and make these, more accessible?
Yeah, I'll let Mark talk about Suspicious. That was a good example.
Suspicious is like Tom's favorite song now, and it was like his least at first. There's just he just started the song off a little goofy, and it just was one of those things where we hear all this stuff and we want it to be unadorned. Like, you're like you were saying, Jacob, you're such a good woman. You can hear the intention, and we all know where the adorned version got to. This kind of version of it. But now we're looking at not doing that at all, and that's really kind of what everybody wants to do. Well, do you cut something off? Well, yeah. I mean, if you have a song that's in two parts and that's the only way it's going to work, then you have to make these decisions. But I don't think we want to do that. You want everything you can have, but that was just one of those instances where it just got cut, right up at the front. And I think that's all Tom needed to have it rise to his top three.
And that is a really strong beginning.
Yeah, they have pretty strong finishes as well. I know versus back in the day, 7 Park Avenue, Golders Green, they'd kind of fade out. And I don't know how much of that was actually in the recording versus, applied. But I think these naturally end, right?
Like Silly Veb.
Mm-hmm.
And Island, there's a song Island that's on 7 Park Avenue. That's going to be on the next album, I think. That is another verse that was cut out about Pete's niece. So it's got an extra verse. It's going to be available later on.
Kevin, from your perspective, obviously these come from different reels, different times, different levels of feedback, distance from the mic. What kind of headaches did you have to go through, or what were kind of some of the technical challenges you faced?
You know, it's a lot easier than it used to be 28 years ago when I first started doing this, because noise reduction sucked back then with DAWs, and now I've got about 5 or 6 different programs I use, and I basically will go through 3 or 4 iterations of a song. And, you know, sometimes I get lucky in there, and Pete was almost in the same place with stuff. And I'm like, all right, this let me bring this over from this other track and bring it down and see if this helps out. And then it's tweaking, and it's like, listen, there's 30 tracks I think on here. It takes time, you know, and it's not anything I rush through. It's like I'll get something, I'll put it down, I'll be like, okay, and I'll try to do like 5 or 6 things at a time and not spend too much. I always feel, always in the studio, usually your first instinct is the right one. Overthinking things gets you into trouble. You open up cans of worms, you start doubting yourself. So I'll lay it down, and then I'll walk away for a day or two, and then come back and listen. Be like, all right, let me tweak this, let me tweak this. So between Sony Oxford plugins, the different Acon Digital, Cedar Digital, all the different programs out there, Isotope, RX11, everything. I'll go through 5 or 6 different iterations to see what lets it sound the most natural. You know, and that's always the thing for me, is because like you can make it so clean that it sounds like you got a blanket almost over everything. You know what I mean? And it's like, sometimes I'll be like, all right, you know what? A little bit of hiss here is okay, because it's in a quiet part before it's a count off and you hear it. But then when you start singing, you're like, okay, it's gone. I'm not paying attention to it. You want to hear Pete. It's not just about being pristine. It's about being natural and letting it be, you know. And it takes time. I mean, guys, what has this been, about 7 months working on this, probably?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
You know,
was it easier, the fact that it was just Pete and an acoustic versus having other instruments on there? Or did that actually make it kind of more fragile, that you had to be careful when you tweaked anything?
You know, that's the whole thing. My tweaking is always just a matter of not looking to like necessarily pull things out more than anything. My thing is cleanliness, but natural sounding. If something is like way too much, like the bait muddy or something, then it's like dig it out and not kill the track. Or, you know, there was one track in particular, I'm not going to say which one, but where I did boost Pete's vocal like 2 dB because it was sitting too tight. And I don't like to do it, but it was one. I said, I'm just going to do this, and that's it. This isn't a remix. Mm-hmm. These aren't remix projects. These are restoration projects. Master them and restore them, because that stuff, that can become about other than the music at that point. It can become about your ego or somebody's ego, and that's not what this is about. This is about Pete Ham, or it's about Tom Evans, or it's about the Ivies, or it'll be Mike or Joey or whatever going forward. That's what this is always about for us. It's about Badfinger. It's not about anything else other than that. It's the music is the focus, not the guys who are doing this. That's we want to put it out there and get the hell out of the way and let people enjoy what was done.
Well put. Can I guess which one was the challenge?
No, and also
No.
there is one song Tom and I were really worried about. It just didn't like sound like the rest. And you know, there's this one really great song of Pete's that we don't have slated for anything, and it's just so muddy. It's like, this doesn't fit. That's the other thing with an album. You have to have, it's all got to sound like it fits. And Kevin sends everything back, and it's like I don't even remember the song.
I'm sure if there's enough demand, everything's going to make its way out eventually. Hopefully, don't keep anything in the vaults. But
good problems.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I mean, there's a blend here that's important. Obviously, it's been sitting back for long enough that once you blow the dust off, you want to make sure that this is the definitive version of these songs that are coming out, and there's not going to be some tweak or something that people are going to wish you did in the future.
Yeah.
Makes sense. How many takes were there from these? Because a lot of these, or a couple of them, are obviously alternate takes from Seven Park Avenue, Golders Green. Were there a lot of takes of some of these songs, or was it really just picking between like two or three?
Not a lot of multiple takes. I can't take it. I think there were 3 takes of that. And obviously something like One Lonely Day, A Lonely Day, there was a couple of those, where he changed the lyrics. But most of them were 1 takes. Hey Blues, there was May Blue. That's part of May Blues, but he doesn't say May, so it's just an alternate take of that. So there's 2 or 3 of those. And the one, Sweet Josephine, that had a lot of takes. He on that he would just keep playing those 2 verses over and over until he kept making mistakes on every take just about. And I ended up using the last 2 takes. I think he did the last 2 sections that were the best, and I edited the best bits together of that. So I made it a little bit longer, having one verse repeated. But I don't think anybody's going to hear the edit. I'm really happy with that. I don't
They
think
might hear it now, but
to figure out where I did the edit on that one.
I think with all their experience working on this and how quality everything is and how quality Pete was as a musician, like not really making a lot of mistakes, but a musician like Pete in that situation where the tape's about to run out, I mean, I don't think we hardly have any instances of him like having a half song. If anything, we have a lot of instances of him writing little mini songs to not lose any tape. And just the same in a studio, if you were in a studio and they ran out of tape midway through a song, they'd probably fire the guy.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so obviously the music is the reason most folks are going to be buying this, but there's also some cover art that I heard there's a long story behind. So can you talk a little bit about the packaging, what went into this, and maybe the conversations with Rich of actually, getting this in the hands of fans?
I'll go first.
Hey, Mark, talk about the photo session.
Yeah. Okay. I came out to New York to have dinner with Kevin and hang out, and then drive up to Tom's and hang out. Tom and I had started to look ahead and think like we need to squirrel things away so we don't use something. Like, what if we put a really great picture on the YouTube channel and that would have been great for an album, So that's what we started to do. Well, just as anything happens, this project came up before you know it. And we're looking around through everything. And Tom had a lot of visions. There was an album cover that was left behind from Dan. We decided not to use it once people started to look at the options we had. And that song I made a video out of for Pete's postcard. But we selected the cover and the back cover and then a couple other things, and then some things didn't make it. We reverted Dan's idea back to the original picture, and then that's what you see on the CD.
Well, yeah, it's the picture before it got solarized.
Yeah,
the original picture. Yeah,
that's the CD or the or underneath
on the CD label. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So then we discovered we were in this situation where we didn't have enough photos. So we had to start thinking, and we went through Tom. I just asked, like, what songs do we have lyrics for that are on this album? like he knew. And so we had 5 songs, right?
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
And so then we printed those 5 songs up. That's what you'll see in the picture on the album, and then you'll see that in the little commercial we made. But we used that, and then we used drawings of Pete's, and then we went through and found reels. We compared it to 7 Park Ave, that picture that was a little similar, and we found some of those same reels and new reels, and then We went to Mary Carlson's house, and she was amazing. We went on March 1st. I actually drove up with my daughter, and we were listening to Be True to Yourself. And when we walked in, Mary was playing that. And it played through twice while we took the photos. It was just very bizarre, but I think there's is something bigger than us. And we took the photos, and we had a lot of leftovers. Mary was going in, taking all these photos. We took all the videos and all the photos for it and put it together for that commercial, and then the one shot for the album. And then we had the art. Tom worked a lot on this picture of the acoustic guitar with Pete's hand, which became the CD tray. Yeah, and then just coming up with all the text and stuff. I get to finally be thanked on a Pete Ham album, which is pretty cool. I was trying to go anonymous there for a long run, just to whatever, but I think the cover turned out amazing. It's a different picture. Obviously, there's no door that says Pete Ham on it with a recording light, but it's a really great picture because when you see it and you're like, I've never seen this before. And he's got a great look on his face, and he's like about to go get to work. And then on the back of the album, there's Pete playing, and that shot, for whatever reason, Tom knows what song he's playing, which is We're for the Dark. And so it's like, that's on here. And, Kevin talks about that being such a great song.
It's from 1970, so it has to be We're for the Dark.
Yeah.
They're the only song he played on acoustic.
Yeah.
And that the cover photo also, it looked a little bit earlier to me. Do we know what sessions? Was that Ivy's era? Or?
Well, you can see Pete's got that Ivy's pinstripe thing on underneath.
That's a giveaway.
That brown shirt he's wearing? Yeah.
Yeah, so who knows?
Probably 68 or 69.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
It goes good. The back cover is 1970, so it's pretty close.
I do think it's a beautiful cover, and I know it's breaking a little bit with the continuity of the different neighborhoods and street names, but I love that he's getting the attention as an acoustic guitar player and songwriter. That's great. I have to ask you, you've mentioned it, you've teased that there's other projects in the works. Can we expect a Pete Ham Electric album or kind of any other themes like that next, or what's ahead?
No, it's just going to be another one like Gwent Gardens, a variety of different songs.
Heavier, right?
Maybe some more piano tunes and some more catchy songs.
As things have gone on, it's like those songs that were slated then, Gwent Gardens, was 18 tracks at the time. So the scale is going to be a bit uneven for the three. But it's basically, the vision is those three albums. Mm-hmm. I think there is a vision of a fourth that Tom never saw, and I see that now too. I don't think that there really could be a fourth. I think this works.
They've run out of songs pretty much with the next one.
Yeah,
should have done this in my research, but how many songs does this make for Pete Ham home demos? We have to be north of 100 and something, right? At this point.
I don't know about home demos, but for total songs,
mm-hmm.
You got all the releases that'll come out eventually for the Ivies, which totals up to like 7-8 albums. Wow. It's 7 albums of Badfinger. What are we looking at here? 7-8 albums. That's a lot of music. Wow. 215, I think, is right around there.
Including all the fragments, he wrote over 200. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's what stands out to me is just, again, how basically anytime this guy picked up a guitar, there was a universal melody that came out of him that people would enjoy 50 years later and be playing on Spotify and things he couldn't even imagine at the time, right? So that's sort of my takeaway. Would love to hear, any kind of closing thoughts. Like what message do you hope that fans and listeners take away from this, and how does that play into Pete's legacy?
I hope they play it as a full album and not shuffle everything because Mark did a great job of sequencing everything. It flows like a concert, in my opinion. I like playing it all in sequence every time. Every time I listen to it.
I totally agree. Listening to things as a full album is not very common anymore. But whenever I find an album now that I enjoy listening to all the way through, it's a real treat. This album, I would love to think people would put it on and just take it in, like it's Pete kind of performing for you, because that's really like what Kevin was saying. That's the feel here. That's the concept of the album, and it flows right. I mean, there's stronger songs that are stronger or poppier here or there, or slower or instrumental there, but I think it's a real trip through his mind and over the years. Great idea to do this album this way. Better than Pete's Rock and Blues would have been.
Or MTV Unplugged.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny the guys mentioned, and this does flow. This flows. And the last album that I remember, one of my all-time favorite albums was Lou Reed's New York. And when that came out, he said, listen to this front to back, don't jump. It tells a story. And this does that. And if you just play it, like I said, you'll feel like you're sitting there next to Pete and just like take it all in. And this particular one, this Pete Ham Acoustic, like I said, it particularly resonates with me because I've seen that Pete's grandson, Luca, is playing acoustic guitar now. And like, I was thinking about this just last week, like, this is cool. Like, this is coming out 50 years afterwards. And this is our present to his grandson is how I kind of feel and that's how all of this has always been for me. And I've said this a million times. The guys know it. This has always been like my way of giving back to their families, because these guys have meant so much to me in my career, whether it's as a musician, as a singer, or as an engineer. The reason I do what I do is because of the influence of those guys.
So it'll be available on all streaming services Friday, April 25th, and then the pre-order for the CD will be up by the time this comes out. So I'll put that in the description too.
So deepdiscount.com has pre-order for the CD right now. They have 10% off.
No vinyl release. I know you guys already fielded some questions on that, but you're not ruling it out someday.
It's not really it wouldn't fit on vinyl. It's too long.
Oh,
yeah. There you go.
The next one will fit on vinyl either.
Double vinyl, triple? No.
Man, I mean,
expensive for
I'm
people.
sure Rich would enjoy that. Yeah.
It would be great, but I think we have a format now that we've been, through the circle of 2024, and people could expect things to repeat that style pretty much. And then, eventually we'll be in a different spot. And then who knows, maybe somebody can get a copy of Misunderstood in 2032. So
got to do a box set at the end with all these together, right?
Yeah, the Mike Gibbons channel is up now, 50 songs. It's approved by his estate through conversations and review, and we are absolutely honored to have even worked on it, that it exists. It's great. There's going to be updates to all the YouTube channels. The Badfinger New Day channel, Pete Ham was updated on in March, and then the Ivies too. So Tom Evans is on the 18th.
And obviously we're honoring Pete with this release, but I think we all love the music from all the guys in the band, and so it's great that everyone's kind of getting that attention and love now.
The whole family's they're great people. We're lucky to be able to work with them.
All of them. Yeah, very lucky. It's a lot. It takes a lot out of us. Tom and I have fights, and we got to resolve them. And traveling all over the place, it's a lot. But we're not going to stop. And this is an honor to be in this situation. We got a lot of work to do to continue this new era and the way it feels, or it seems to feel to everyone. There's a lot of good winds blowing in the same direction on things, and that's different. We owe it to everybody to do the best we can.
As much as the challenge that you're facing, I'm just keep it coming. That's all I can say. I think I speak for everyone watching. So
that's the plan, right, guys?
Yeah, like the other guy said, we just want to preserve everything in the best form possible for the fans and for the families and the estates, just to preserve this music forever.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think this was a good one. Thank you guys so much for doing it. I think it's great. This is the dream team. People want to see what goes on behind the scenes. It wouldn't happen without you. And it's not just a note on the back of the CD, right? I mean, it takes a lot of work and a vision to put this together. So thank you for making it possible.
I could do this once a week.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to tell me twice. So keep these releases coming. Maybe we can do a check-in.
Yeah.
It's great.
Anytime. All right, guys.
Thanks again. All right, take care.
I
have to do a fast one. Again to the end of the tape, again to the end of the tape, again to the end of the tape.